as to what it wants to do with the mining sector. There have been so many voices and statements, actions made by various entities. And now more than ever, my appeal is that we actually have to come together and provide support when needed. And we should try to even think more proactively as opposed to reactively. One thing that we've done at the Chamber of Mines is that we've formed a public relations group. We have, in fact, as I mentioned, brought in Rocky Di Maculangan, who used to handle TVI. As many of you know, TVI was an embattled company for many years, literally in the throes of violence and a social pariah, and was actually vilified, but actually has turned that corner around. And, you know, Rocky's helped do that with the company, and that's why we brought him into the Chamber of Mines. We've also brought in a good guy like Ronnie to help us on issues. We are actually very active now. We have a group working in Congress with legislators, with the Committee on Natural Resources, to actually help lobby the issues that we are facing. You see, there is a major concerted effort by our detractors, and they are all linked. And we have identified that. We hired an entity that did political risk analysis, you know, some think tanks, to help study the question. And we have identified all our detractors. We know who they all are. We know their affiliations. We know their links. And I think I'm not going to go to what the government needs to do. I think we all know, we know that. It's simply that the government needs to implement the mining law. I mean, to me, that's the first and foremost. I mean, we can keep talking about legislation, but at the end of the day, we already have a very good law that just merely needs to be properly implemented. The second is, I would like to think, is there needs to be a forum where government actually meets with the stakeholders, primarily the mining industry, to be able to thresh out the issues, rather than we are battling and challenging the issues on one another in the media, on the streets. I mean, this is preposterous. While we champion and herald democracy, that's not the way democracy should be working. At least it's not working well. So we challenge the government to create the proper forum. Now, while we're heartened by the president creating a panel, you know, let's look at that panel. I think the panel, the numbers are a little bit stacked against us in that panel. So, you know, well, I don't want to get personal. So these are some of the things. So to me, the challenge should be not as far as government, because government will be merely reactionary. I mean, it's reacting to the public sentiment. So what we as an industry need to do, and what you as individual players and companies need to do, is to be more vocal. You need to be out there projecting yourselves, your companies, the industry, in the most positive light possible, and actually engage, and not just sit on our hands and wait for the slugs to connect on our body, because that's what's been happening. And the Chamber of Mines cannot on its own and alone do it. We rely on the strength of the entire industry to come together. And I'm happy that it started, but we can't continue. We can't continue as we did in the past. We have to step up. And that's my challenge to you. If you want us to fight, well, we need the support. It's not just money. It's when we ask companies to tell us, what are you doing well? Give us the story so that we can help articulate that. We can help come out with it. Please do it and give us the information. Don't hide under, you know, whatever you're hiding and hoping that you want to stay under the radar for fear of getting attacked. I mean, we all need to speak up, because if we don't, they're going to pick us off one by one.
Don't go, Philip. Any questions from the floor? Yes, please. You've talked a lot about a PR campaign and engaging with the communities, etc., but you didn't mention, I don't think, the church, which seems to me to be a particular challenge and a very difficult one. Even some of the hierarchy of the church who say that they're in favour of responsible mining. It's a different thing in a lot of the provinces with a lot of the priests who are radically opposed to any sort of mining, despite the fact that they use mobile phones and drive cars and have wristwatches and things like that. But could you respond to that, please?
It's a tricky issue, a tricky situation. But let's look at it fairly. My family comes from the province of Leyte, and I met the bishop in Palo, the archdiocese, which essentially handles Region 8. And he said, "Philip, you know, there's this mining activities going on, and the farmers are complaining, and we have to stop this." And so I said, "Please tell me a little bit more about it." You see, what happens is, and in fairness to many priests and bishops, is they're the last entity that people go to cry on their shoulders because they're not getting response from companies or the local officials or national officials. So they become the defender of the meek and the powerless. So they have taken it upon themselves to champion that faraway voice. And we cannot hold it against the church or some church members for doing that. Now, in many ways, there are, in cases like that, it's merely a question of enlightening everyone and communicating the issue. In fact, I promised, and I promised the bishop. In fact, right there and then, I called up Secretary Paje. And I said, "Secretary Paje, you got to listen to the bishop." And I have friends in media in Region 8, so I said, "Please, go and find out." Well, you know, ironically, what happened was when the media went there and they started interviewing people, the people were actually happy. And they said they were fine. And so I asked the media, I said, "Look, I don't want to be the one to explain that to the bishop. So can you go talk to the bishop and explain that to the bishop? Because at least you're independent, you're a third party, go and explain that." And I was happy that they did. So it's really a question of us getting the right people to talk to the right, using the right people to talk to certain people, because the issues of credibility are there. Now, it's true, there are going to be mining detractors, and many bishops that we keep hearing and seeing in the news are ideologically opposed. And there's very little we can do about that. Actually, the challenge there, and I'm glad media's there in the corner, is that maybe we can ask them to stop interviewing these people, because they're just going to be mouthing the same thing. And my challenge to media is maybe rather than go to the default opinion makers, maybe you can go to other people who might have a truer view rather than having the title of XYZ and giving that opinion, so that we can get a better representation of the situation. Now, yes, we are dialoguing with men of the cloth, and I'm actually happy to see that the new Archdiocese of Manila is now led by Archbishop Tagle, because I know him to be a very sober, balanced person, a very bright one. And I'm sure if the church hierarchy, which, by the way, is also filled with politics, gets proper people, people with the right mindset to present the issues, I'm confident over time we should be able to get a better shake. But again, it's really the challenge falls on us to make sure that we can get the voices heard to the right people so that we can move on. And again, it's also hoping that media will stop giving people too much importance when they shouldn't be even given any space.
Thank you, Philip. We're running out of time, so I'd like to open the floor to just one more question. Well, I'll ask the last question. Philip, as we all know, the leadership of the DNR has proposed increasing the government share in contracts. We're calling this the 5% royalty for whatever. Could you please give us an update on where that proposal is and what the industry is doing through the Chamber of Mines to address that proposal?
Yes, actually, we've been opposing that from the outset. In fact, we've called it preposterous for the DNR to even suggest that you should start adding an additional 5% excise tax. I mean, the very reason that the mining law was actually passed was to create incentive for people to invest in the mining sector. And my answer to the government is that, look, while you've given on one hand, you're taking away on the other, and it becomes impossible. That is actually being studied now. I mean, it's truly understandable, though, for government to want more, as being the owners of the minerals. I guess the question really is finding the right formula. Can we find the right formula so that when mineral prices go up, the formula will allow a fairly even share of the benefits of the upswing, however, recognizing at the same time the risk that the investors had made. But you see, the flip side to that argument is that the government and the NGOs will say, yes, but if you think about it, while companies are taking the financial risk, it's the communities and the country that is taking the environmental risk. So that's why you're getting a big discussion now in government of the need to quantify the value of air, water, as key elements that should be considered in an entire evaluation of the feasibility of a mining project. So it's becoming more challenging. I really don't know what the final outcome will be. But my sense is that the President has said, and I've heard it through various cabinet members, is that a mining policy will come out soon. I don't know when soon is, but soon. And that at the end of the day, what's going to happen is everyone will be a little bit unhappy. Now, what does that signify? If you're taking clues from what the President's statements have been, he's already said that he is in favor of large-scale responsible mining. And he's a bit bothered by small-scale mining because it is difficult to regulate. But at the same time, he's also saying that the rightful share of the Philippine government and the Filipino people must be attained. So, you can see where the direction is going. Also, you're hearing that they're concerned about environmental issues. So there are questions about whether or not mining should be allowed in certain type of localities and terrains and areas of biodiversity, particularly small islands. If you see the recent action by the government on Sibuyan, that shows you a kind of general direction. So you're starting to see, without government actually articulating it or saying it that this is the final mining policy, you're starting to see a trajectory of what it might look like.